So, Patricia, good to talk with you. I know today we're talking about raising chickens. And my first question is, do you have chickens, or have you ever raised chickens?
Yes, I have had chickens before. And now here in Utah, eight. I have eight chickens.
Oh, wow. So do you live like in town, or are you kind of out of town?
I live in town. In town.
Okay.
You're allowed to have chickens, but you're not allowed to keep or have roosters. That applies all over because, roosters make a lot of noise. They're loud. And the police could come and give you a ticket. I've seen that happen. I've seen that before. I've owned and had to get rid of a rooster. I got him when he was a baby and small, and I couldn't tell if it were a girl, a hen, or if it were a boy. I didn't know until it got bigger. Then I noticed that it wasn't a girl; it was a boy.
Yeah, we have chickens too, and in our town we can have up to 5 chickens, and like you, no roosters. But we did one time when we got the chicks. We thought we got 5 hens, but it turned out that we had one rooster. So that was it was a little confusing because the kind of chicken it was a buff Orpington, which is one of those big yellow chickens that are usually super friendly. But this one was like being very aggressive and kind of attacking other chickens. And we just didn't know what was going on. And then finally we figured out, oh, it's a rooster. So when you figured out you had a rooster, what did you do with yours?
When I've noticed its face first, and it had the feathers sticking up on the top of its head, straight up. And who I bought it from, where I bought the chickens from, he gave me 8. I bought 8. And I couldn't. I said, "How do you know which one's boys and girls?" And the caretaker was just like, "It's hard to decide and tell at this time. You gotta wait." And when I took them home, I had the 8 chickens, but my deaf dog named Daisy saw the chickens. Daisy, like the flower. She's deaf, and she saw the chickens moving around. She's all excited. She thought they were tennis balls. Yeah, tennis balls. That's her favorite ball. That's her favorite. She was so excited. She ran in, she broke in, she grabbed one in her mouth and dropped it in front of me. And I went over and I picked it up. I said, "Oh, what is that?" And I noticed it was a piece of meat. Ugh. So 2 died, and one was a rooster. Daisy killed 2. And I had 6. I still couldn't see or notice which one was girls and which ones were boys. I did have one rooster, and I seen it was acting aggressive and had them feathers sticking straight up on its head. And I went on the internet, pulled up a page, and a man came and took the rooster. He had a big farm, and he took them there, and he was a butcher and took chicks for meat. So then I had
Yeah.
6 to 5. I went from 6 to 5. One decided to fly, and it was wrong, and it died. So then I was down to 4 or whatever. It was a good experience. But I had to keep them warm in the winter, with the snow. You have to keep them warm. Every day, the water I had to keep warm. Their water I had to keep warm. And I had these heat lamps in their room to keep them warm. And when they would sleep, the hens, I had a small door. I didn't have a coop. They would sleep in the hood.
Okay.
In the morning, they would go outside, and at night, I would bring them back in.
So are they able to just kind of have free range in your yard, or do you have kind of a fenced in area for them to stay in?
I had the fenced in area, not the free range.
Yeah.
That worked best for me.
Well, kind of a funny story with our rooster. Once we figured out that it was that it was a rooster, Holly, my wife, wanted to get rid of it. And we we're figuring out a way to do it. Her plan right away was like, we should take it somewhere and drop it off in the woods where we've seen foxes. Let the fox get it, which is actually illegal in our town. And I was actually on a committee with the chief of police at that time, who knew about my chickens. So if we would have dropped off a rooster somewhere, I think the police would have known that it came from our house. So we didn't do that activity. But one time when we used to let the roosters kind of range, we have a big fenced in yard, so the chickens would range free in our yard. And then they have a smaller run that is kind of covered on top and on the sides with chicken wire. And there's a little door that goes into that. So one night, my wife locked the rooster out at night, and she was hoping that a fox would come by and get the rooster before it was able to get to the morning. But what actually happened is the rooster kind of bedded down in the raspberry bushes for the night. And then the next morning at like 5 o'clock in the morning, the rooster went right under our neighbor's window and started crowing super loud. So it was way worse to have let the rooster stay out overnight, because it was just like right by our neighbors being super annoying. So we have a friend who lives out of town who butchers chickens and turkeys when it gets to be Thanksgiving time. So we took the rooster out to their place, and they were able to, once the weather got a little colder, they were able to take care of the rooster. I'm curious though, you had mentioned about keeping the chickens warm during the wintertime. What do the temperatures get down to where you live in Utah?
Somewhere between about 10 degrees.
Okay.
Yeah, about 10. If it's really cold, I keep them in. I won't let them go out. But usually 10 degrees. It's usually okay. It's cold, but if you live up in the mountains, it's negative. Up in the mountains, it's super cold. It's really cold up there. And it's about negative 10 degrees. Sometimes 5, 10, negative,
Okay, because in Duluth, where I live in Minnesota, it gets a lot colder than that. Like we can get down to 30 below. And we really have found that the first time we had chickens, I tried to keep like a heat lamp in there. The only thing I have now is we have a kind of a plastic water container that has a heating element in it. So you can plug that in, and it keeps the water from freezing. And so we have that, and that's the only heat we used all winter, and they were fine. that I have a light on a timer because we're far enough north that the sun rises and sets so late. So we have kind of a light turn on at about 6 in the morning and shut off at 8 o'clock in the morning, and then turn on at about 5 at night and shut off at 7 at night, just so they get a little bit more light. But our chickens have done just fine with the cold weather. They even when it's cold and snow, they go out in the snow and kind of create little paths, and they definitely eat more in the wintertime, and we feed them more black oil sunflower seeds so they get the oil and fat. But we haven't had to keep them warm at all.
Really?
So I don't know if that's the difference between Minnesota chickens and Utah chickens, or what's the difference.
Sunflower seeds they love?
Those black sunflower seeds. Yeah, that's a really good. They like that in the wintertime because they like kind of the oil and the fat that's in there. What do you usually feed your chickens?
Raw vegetables, raw veggies. I cook that usually, or so I have the option, or seeds. I get seeds. I do both. Some people do the vegetables always. If there's nothing to eat, then the seeds. I sprinkle that around. Sunflower seeds. In the wintertime, though, they don't eat a lot. They don't go out a lot. Don't like to go outside. They stay in and keep warm. I have lights on the top rack, and the chicks nest on there in the warmth. In the morning, maybe about the afternoon, like 1 o'clock, they'll go out. Because it's not as cold, but at night, it's cold. So later at night, they'll nest. Yes. I build 2 shelves, and they nest on the top shelf.
Yeah. Because that's like we actually have our coop is in our garage. So it's like we built a closet in our garage, and then they just have a little entry door from the outside, kind of like a little cat door that we can open and close. And then in that, I built a couple levels of, kind of put 2x4s up that they go and roost on those. And then we have shelves that have kind of the nesting boxes in those. So what's funny for me is we have 3 nesting boxes and 5 chickens, and they all want to use the same box. It's like there are 2 empty boxes, and there'll be one chicken sitting on top of another chicken because it wants to get into the same box. I don't quite understand that. For your chickens, do they tend to lay in different places, or do they all lay in the same place?
Mine's setup is similar, but that never happens. They all stay in their own spaces, their own boxes. All the chickens know their places and their seats, and that's where they'll nest. I never had that problem you had, where that experience where they all huddle up on top of each other. They lay eggs, sometimes 2 in the morning, and I gather them, and they're really warm.
Yeah. How many eggs do you get a day generally?
Five or 4, 6. 4, 5, 6, around there, somewhere in between there.
Okay. And so remind me, how many chickens do you have now? Because I thought before you had 8, then you lost 2 to the dog, and 1 was a rooster. So you're down to 5, or?
Yeah, so I had 8. 2 died to the dog. 1 was a rooster. And then the 1 jumped and escaped the fence. And it isolated itself. I brought it back. And I had to cut off its wings. It couldn't fly anymore. It injured itself. And then they grew back again. And I put it, my dog was excited to play with it. And it died.
Yeah.
So now 4. I have 4 chickens.
The first flock of chickens we got, we had 5. And the one that my daughter really took to was one that kept jumping up, flying over the fence and escaping. And eventually it just took off and we never got it back. So that was a little sad moment for our daughter, who I think was like 7th grade at the time. So for her to kind of lose her chicken, that was really hard. But I think that's, part of the lessons of having farm animals is that the animals come and the animals go. So there's kind of the lessons of life and death that come with that too.
Yeah, it's funny because I have a stable with a horse and a cow, and you're allowed to own them here. You're allowed to have animals, like cows, horses, and I have them in the stable, and it's fine. That's a new thing for me and a new experience. In the East, I wasn't allowed to have it in the East Coast in DC. But here, you're allowed to pick your options of multiple set of animals, whatever you want.
Wow, yeah. In what town are you in again?
Here I live in South Jordan. South Jordan.
South Jordan, okay. And that's pretty close to Salt Lake City, is that right?
Yeah, 20-minute drive by car, 15-minute drive, something
Great.
like that.
Well, I think we're about out of time. It was really fun talking with you about chickens.
Yes, thanks for sharing your experience and what you know. It's fun to talk with people who've raised chickens and experienced that like myself. Okay, take care. Great, good. Thanks, bye. Good.